front of you, but basically it's kind of like if this, then that. So if the Israelis actually attack, then the language will be fulfilled by this giant problem that will result from that. If the Israelis don't attack, some of the language may be fulfilled as we get into discussions of what could have happened, and then other parts of the language would be fulfilled from some other kind of an event or series of events, including this idea of maybe swine flu actually mutating into something very, very, very deadly.
So let's not be quite so abstract about it, George. Let me see if I can summarize it this way. Around October 25th, if Israel bombs Iran and uses a bunker buster, one possibility is that we get a cloud of radioactive crap, for lack of a better term, that blows up into the upper atmosphere, circles the planet 9 times, and that causes a large number of deaths, including, 1 in 5 over the long term on the west coast of the U.S.
Correct.
And then that's if that's the fulfillment of a descriptor set related at the archetype level to ill winds. On the other hand, we could have a lot of discussion about a bombing of Iran in that period of time, but the ill winds that circle the Earth 9 times could be this massively virulent strain of the flu. So it's very hard to separate where the ill winds are coming from. We know roughly what the death toll is going to be over the next year and a half because it comes from the part of the model. You may recall back in August of 2004, prior to the Banda Aceh earthquake, we had the 300,000 dead, land driven back to a previous age descriptor about 5.5 months before the Sumatra earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
right.
from the same part of the model now, we're getting really horrific numbers for the next year and a half.
Okay, let's also talk about the Iranian demonstrations that they've had over the past month or so. Does that factor into any of this? Do you pick up anything?
The language set was too small. It was a put-up job. There was no large-scale support. We do a lot of snooping on Farsi, which is the basic language of the Iranian population.
Right.
And the level of interest in actively participating, that is to say those kind of words that would have actually gotten people off their butts, was way below 1%. And in order for a revolution to succeed, you need at least 2% of the population to be actively discussing getting off their butt and doing something. So it was some kind of I think it was a ploy. I think it was some kind of as I say, a put-up job. Somebody paid it to occur, like some of these other revolutions that have occurred in the Baltic states. And
you can actually see evidence of it, George. If you scan the headlines off the foreign press, you'll read about how this group and that was twittering the population, trying to get something rolling. In fact, there was some what appears to be deliberate disinformation put out via Twitter and some websites that the opposition leader had won. So when the incumbent administration, in fact, won, then there was this whole mystique of discount.
Thing.
Right.
And then the British embassy and all the people being arrested because they were flooding the place with money, trying to foment stuff. And, and basically we have to acknowledge that in 1953, the Iranians were in a situation of having had a republic and a revolution that was taken over by the Illuminati, which expresses itself as the crown of Britain, which claims to own 1/6 of the planet, wants to own the rest of it. So we're getting back into that level of stuff again. Now the point is, at this stage, without mincing words, is that it appears that if our conclusion is correct, that the Illuminati actually have an agenda to wipe out part of the planet, that they've set off 2 major threads that they think will achieve that, and they launched these about 4 or 5 months ago. Coincident, too, and we knew it was coming, coincident, too, some earth changes that we had labeled the global coastal event. But one of these was the release of the swine flu vaccine issue.
Intentionally.
Intentionally, quite correct. There's so much linguistics to support that. There's so much linguistics to support corruption in big pharma that you start getting to the point where it is easier to accept the outlandish idea that chemtrails and the vaccine are a 2-part killing machine than it is to refute them or to find any reason to believe any of the big pharma guys. They've lied to us so long, why should I believe them?
Do you get chatter like Bin Laden is dead or he's alive? And then
Sure.
Can you, all right, and what do you conclude by that?
The preponderance of data would suggest that indeed he is dead. the support levels that we got from within the powers that be entity suggesting that Cheney had Bhutto killed over that casual remark about bin Laden being dead seems to be absolutely right on, in the sense that there was a whole lot of support for that. So
the Internet chatter really concludes that?
The Internet chatter, the preponderance in non-English favors that, correct. There's a it gets
all right, do you have to weigh this, though?
Correct.
Because, first of all, if you're in a region where you pick up a lot of chatter, but they, for some reason, just can't stand us, one could conclude that it's skewed against us, so you have to weigh that, I would assume.
Correct.
Okay.
It all goes through a filter, and we work it at archetypes. So but the great enemy, the hated enemy, blah blah blah, basically again was a large front for what the government was doing in their attacks against the American populace. And I say government, it's not really the government that's attacking, it's the controllers that own the government.
Sure. The special interests.
No, I'm not even saying that. The special interests are but tools. They're part of what we call the minion class. I'm talking about those people that go all the way up to the 13 families and the bloodline fellows that think they own.
You're going all the way to the top.
Correct. Sure. And they decided, okay, it's time to pull the plug. We'd seen some very large archetypes. Let me back up and say about the time in 97 that I discovered that there was something going on with the sun relative to the big scary ball in the sky as opposed to Stanford University Network stock that I was actually tracking. I also came across this thread of meaning that we were going to go into a period of fascistic thought that was going to be engineered because it was the last gasp, if you will, of what I term the bloodline control structure. And this goes all the way back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So we're seeing the culmination of a wave that has a 500-year peak in it and a 2,500-year peak in it and so on, all the way back to Taurus, the age of Taurus, when the certain control structures came out. Dictatorial control structures of Taurus faded over into mass, more humane, if you will, control structures within the Pisces age, and it kind of is reflected by the astrology. Now we're about to get into the Aquarian age, and those control structures are basically losing it, losing control, losing their own sense of themselves within the giant magnetic squeeze we're all going through, and so they're reacting badly. And they've apparently decided, well, that badly is going to implement some of their plans.
Well, what's amazing is you both seem to echo what some of the alternative media and some of the things we've said on this program. It's almost as if we may have stumbled into it in an unscientific way, backed up by what you two do scientifically.
Yeah, there is that, and there's also, as part of the major shift, what is now the alternative media is in the process of becoming the new mainstream, the new DeVoe. The old line,
led by Coast to Coast, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, quite seriously, we have this thing called model of model space, or MOM, and it is necessary for us to model things like the Coast to Coast show so that we can eliminate that language whenever it talks about it, and so thus it doesn't pollute and get into circuitous references.
Mm-hmm.
So George can pick up from there.
Yeah, and essentially what that means going forward is that the alternative media is rolling into a new position of power, and what has been the corporate-controlled MSM, we call it, the mainstream media, which has been that media which has been rolled up into corporate megalopolies, will eventually fade and roll into or be subsumed by this emerging new media on the Internet, provided that the Internet stays up.
But let's also remove that word eventually, George. I mean, we're talking about something relatively immediate. Yeah.
I mean, over the next year or two.
Well, I've got to tell you.
5 months for Coast to Coast. The Coast to Coast show in our model space takes a huge jump sometime in November during the period of time that the Obama administration's running around flapping like chickens being chased by a dog.
Interesting. When you just said that if the Internet stays around.
Oh, by the way, I have to compliment you on having Ron Paul on earlier.
Oh, he's a great guy.
I like great him. Guy. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You know, he's just, all I want is the truth. You know, we can handle things. Tell us the truth and let us react to it. You know?
Thank you.
And gee, you know, these lies and deceit and so many things that have gone on over the years. Mm-hmm. I mean, just it's gamesmanship. It's lining their own pockets. And, you know, we're going to keep watching it. And you two obviously do.
Sure.
And you know, we'll just keep this formidable force to keep pushing the way we're pushing.
And that's probably the only hope we have. Our real problem is that our data shows that the impetus towards revolution turns violent. And the minute that it turns violent, we're playing into the hands of these people because that's what they want.
That's dangerous and sad, because once that goes that way, then all of a sudden you'll see what happens. But
look how powerful we are if we were all like Gandhi and just said, no, I'm not going to cooperate with this.
I just don't think American troops would turn on Americans. I think they'd put their guns down. I think they would say, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to join them.
I think between a combination of indoctrination and drugs, troops.
That's not a safe bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but the reality is that you're wishing and hoping. I think, George, at that point.
True. I always do.
Oh, as do we. I mean, we're hopeful that revolution will be only a linguistic phrase and won't be the to the barricades mon frere. But linguistically, by the time things get really bad and food is in short supply come middle to late 2010, that's the kind of language that pops up. We certainly don't support it.
I even think it's stupid. Yeah.
See, I think the housing situation is worse than they're even telling us.
Oh, it's far worse. It's far worse. Banks are cutting deals with people left and right so they can stay in their homes so that they don't have to report it as real estate owned, and the foreclosure rates are largely on hold because they're afraid to collapse the market further by admitting how many homes they really own.
Yeah. They don't want the houses back. They're trying to do everything they can. Stay in the house, pay us a little bit.
By the way, actually suggest that in the near future, and it may be as early as 2011 or so, a cadre of young people mainly will be what we call them demolition Danas, I think was the label we gave them, mainly because it would be surprisingly feminine-led. And these people would be going out salvaging, if you will, in the U.S., strip malls and houses that are abandoned and had no hope of ever being occupied. That would be a new industry.
Though this did not happen quickly, it seems like it snuck up on us, but it did not. But why does it feel that way?
That may be part of the actual, the feelings component of our work has actually changed. The initial emotional parameters I set seem to have been altered, and I've had to constantly adjust the data, and which has led me to the conclusion that Terence McKenna is right, that time is fractal. And now I think that there may even be an actual physical or quantum reason for this, and that is this giant magnetic rim that we're going through, which, by the way, takes 20 years to cross. And curious, all the Mesoamerican calendars had 20 as one of their chief cycles, 20 by 13. And there's another 13 component in crossing this. But you may be feeling that because of external energies from space, what we called unknown energies from space for so long.
And speaking of space, I mean, do you see some positive things in that arena?
Oh, yeah, actually really cool stuff relative to the contact meme, as we call it, which is actually manifesting now. Some of the language was showing up in actually on your show. You were talking with someone, I think, out of the Midwest, out of MUFON, who kept using all the same kind of language we've been describing.
Yeah, she was putting on a conference out there.
Yeah, surprise, and how they were startled about the number of coming in the middle of the country and so on. And we have seen something that's also pending for South America, where there will be some kind of a fairly large or mass sighting that will make all of these people, and we're talking millions, not into believers, but will shade them over to, oh, yes, I know what I saw kind of a thing.
Now, how do we know it's real or it's false? Because there has been talk on the Internet especially about a false project of almost hologram-type UFOs.
Oh, Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That those Illuminati type want us to believe in order to implement more of their control plan.
And that's the real problem, is that we live in a morass of shifting sands, not able to get our feet firmly underneath it. So we won't know, and there's no clear indicator. For instance, it may turn out that orbs, for instance, are in fact the most efficient expression of life in universe, which is a sphere. And there's no reason to actually have a body our way if you could be a sphere. So they may be more real than any UFO that actually ever shows up that's a mechanical. And the UFOs that show up may in fact be extraterrestrial, but